everybody. I am David Lombardino. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of DLA Editors and Proofers. We have been editing great books since 2008. We offer developmental editing, line editing, and copy editing services. And tonight, or this evening, we have the pleasure of welcoming Jessica Berg. Jessica Berg is a literary agent and author passionate about nurturing unique voices in publishing. As an agent with Rose Cliff Literary, she focuses on character-driven stories and high-stakes narratives, helping authors navigate the industry. Her own fiction explores identity, intergenerational trauma, and relationships. A multi-nominated writer with an MFA from Spalding University, Jessica is a member of the AALA and EFA. One thing I really like about Jessica is she actually knows what it's like to be an author. She is represented by Amy Collins of Talcott Notch. Tonight's session is on the art of the online pitch, but I know Jessica likes to make these sessions interactive. We got your registration questions on a variety of topics. So Jessica, I will let you take it from here.
Great. Thank you, David, so much, and DLA for hosting. This is such a fantastic opportunity. And thank all of you for, taking time out of your Halloween. I've just dated our YouTube, so it'll be okay. I really do appreciate it. As David said, I love for these sessions to be generative. I like it to feel like a conversation and not a presentation because I want to tell you, teach you, help you learn what you need to know. I can talk about all of these topics at length, but if it's not useful to you, what's the point in any of us being here and spending the hour together? So we have sort of structured this to talk about online pitching events, which we see really common and often, I guess, quarterly or so on X, right? So Quest Pit, You Deserve It Pit. I'm blanking on all the other ones, but there are several online hashtag pitching events that agents like myself will pop into and take a look and see if we find a pitch that's captivating. And if we do, we heart the post and then we go from there. So I want to talk about what makes a compelling pitch from that perspective, but I also want to talk about what makes a compelling pitch if you're sitting down with someone like me at a conference. Before I go into either topic, does anyone have a preference where we start? I'm going to badger you until you answer, so someone has to answer. I'm so sorry. Look, Mary Beth is laughing because she knows me. She's like, she will badger you. Okay. Well, let's talk about online pitches because I think they are so very different than in person. In person, you've got 8 to 15 minutes. We have both had coffee. We're in the conference vibe. There's a completely different situation. An online pitching event is really where you get to shine because you are in the driver's seat, right? You can craft your pitches weeks at a time. You can tweak them, toss them to your critique partners, your beta readers. Hey, does this sound like my book? So one thing I want to point out that I see so frequently with online pitches is it's so vague. Phrases like a life-changing journey or dark secret or unlikely friendship don't tell me anything. If we're working with the confines of 240 characters, we need to be very specific. So I don't want to see overused tropes. I don't want to see anything that makes your narrative, your project, feel like everything else I've seen. So what we want instead is really specific pitches. So I want to see your narrative, maybe with a comparative title, or fans of this, or X meets Y, and here's why. I also love to see very specific stakes. So general stakes. She risks everything. Will he save his life? I don't know because I don't care. Give me something very specific. One kiss binds her fate to the deadly prince. I was reading a lot of fantasy when I was writing these notes. Okay, just so you know. Because we need to know what makes your pitch different and we need to know why we care. As agents, I'm sifting through the most recent example is Dark Pit, which happened just a few weeks ago. And I had a ton of really fun pitches, but so many of them felt so vague. Nothing was concise and there was nothing specific. So I like to see if you start with conflict and intrigue straight away, and then lean into what makes your narrative unique. So why is your pitch different? In post-apocalyptic Venice, one woman's art can spark rebellion. That is very specific, and that makes me curious, right? Anytime we're trying to garner attention, get someone to invest in our narrative, it's because we are curious. That's why we as readers turn the page. We want to know what happens next, and the pitch event is exactly the same. I also highly recommend using your genre tags for any online pitching event. So YA, thriller, SFF, WF for women's fiction. Figure out what your tags are because I search for those. If I'm in the mood for gothic horror, I'm going to search for gothic horror's tag versus if I want something with spec fic and a magical twist. So what we're talking about here is the specificity of your pitch. We need to make sure that it is clear as possible. I'm going to pause there and ask if anyone has questions specific to online pitches. Yeah.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Hey,
Just
thank you. Thank you. Yes. What's your question?
sorry, I'm gonna probably have a lot of questions. Also,
good.
do I use the hand raising? Okay, cool.
We don't stand on pretense. You're fine.
Great. So I just wanted to know, what if you're sort of like unsure of like what tag to put your book to actually like to put your manuscript and like pitch to make it actually seen? Because like like horror romance or dark fantasy, those are very general. Like a lot of people are searching for that. But what if you have something that's a little bit more niche that I like my manuscript is just whatever.
Can you say what your genre mashup is? Like,
sure.
Do you have a genre mashup? That's kind of what I'm getting.
Yes.
Okay. What is it? What are your two genres? Your three genres?
It is fantasy,
Uh-huh.
adventure,
Mm-hmm.
and mystery, maybe thriller.
Okay, we've got a lot of things competing for attention here, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to pull this completely apart for you, okay? So in
Great.
fantasy, it is inherent to some degree that we're going to have adventure, right? Because that's the pillar of the genre is that we are going on a quest, we're having something happen. So I think if there is it low fantasy, mid, or high?
I was told that since it's set in like a different world, it's high fantasy, but the
Mhm.
world is like ours, and they have technology that is dated to around the 70s. So they have telephones, they have records, they have
Okay,
radios.
so
Um,
alternate history, then not fantasy.
no, like they have technology, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's not set in the 70s.
No,
No,
sorry.
just that's where the tech stops. No, that was me. It's very late. I've been up forever. It's me. Okay. So, since adventure is inherent in the fantasy genre, I would X the adventure portion component out of it. We already know that it's adventure. Talk to me about why you think it's maybe mystery slash thriller.
Because the main character, they see a apparition at their family meal, and only a certain amount of people see it. And then the next day, when she's walking home, she sees a missing woman's poster that is sorry that is of the apparition that looks exactly like
Mm,
their
mm,
apparition. And then she and her friends like try and figure out like what is happening. And
mm,
yeah,
mm.
I don't want to
Okay,
take up
yeah.
too much time or like so like I just
As long as everyone is okay with this is the kind of the situation I love if everyone's all right with it, because I think we as authors learn from other people, right?
Mhm.
Like if we can, we're learning through you. So I am completely fine as long as everyone else buys in.
Yeah.
Um, great. Okay. So I like that we're hearing ghosts and a missing woman. I think that a mystery probably feels closer. So if we're crafting a pitch, it might be um the fantastical elements of and use your comp title meet the mystery of and use a comp title, because if this sounds like a sort of complex plot, we've got a lot of things happening, and if you are in an online setting, you want to capture attention, right, as we've said, as quickly and immediately as you can. And so when you're dealing with something that's complex, why not bring it to something that your potential agent might already know? So look at those comps and then ask yourself, what are the themes of the comparative titles that I feel resonate with my work? And I think that that can help shape that pitch a little bit more clearly. And then if you have space in the actual post, then toss in all your hashtags. Use everything that you want. That's fine. It's just be very specific in the pitch itself, right? Okay.
Okay.
And that answers it for you.
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. And that's sort of what we're talking about as well, right? Is knowing what we as agents are looking for and how you can best stand out in the crowd. I think these online pitch events are really fun too because you can utilize mood boards. You can link out to playlists. So if anyone does that instead of writing, me, right? I'm like, I don't need to write. I'm just going to make a mood board. It's all vibes. It's fine. We love to see that though too, right? Because it's the visual representation, and that helps me as an agent say, oh, I can see where this might fit on a shelf. Because when you're pitching, this whole thing is how can I understand where your book will fit on a shelf? The other way of saying that is how can I sell this book? Okay. Um, great. So any more questions before we move on to in-person pitching? No, great. Kirk, can I pick on you for a minute? Oh, do you have a question? Yeah.
Maybe an odd question. For online pitches, if say you have a manuscript that was accepted by a small publisher twice and both of them closed, should I mention that in the pitch?
No, that is not relevant to the pitch at all because it's going to muddy we want clarity. Think of your pitch like the 5-second radio spot where you're like, I have to stop everything and find out more, right? Later on, if you get that agent who says, I'd love you to send me a query, make sure you put that information in the query letter itself. But for the pitch, no, keep it as clean as you can.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Amy, I think you're muted. There we go.
Yeah. Sorry, got a little trigger happy there. For the hashtags, with the mashup, is she going to do separate hashtags? So hashtag high fantasy, hashtag whatever the other ones that she decides are, or is it going to be all together in one thing? Like okay.
And it's not even high fantasy. There's a list of hashtags that are generally used in online pitching events. So for that narrative, that's the sort of genre mashup, we would use hashtag SFF. And that's very vague, but science fiction fantasy would be that first start. So if an agent is looking for a narrative like that, they're going to start by searching the hashtag.
Okay. And then she would just add the other,
add them all. Yes, for sure. Okay. Add them all. Yeah, okay. Definitely. I'd like to pick on Kirk here. He's in the audience. He is my client. So full disclosure, I already read his book and it's fantastic and I love it. But I noticed when Kirk was, talking about his book online, because it is a genre mashup, I felt, and Kirk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt very much like you were like, how do I fit all of what this narrative is into this 240 characters?
Yeah, it was really hard.
So do you have any advice for everyone else who's trying to do that? Because you're dealing with historical fiction, you've got action, you've got adventure, you've got espionage, you've got so much going on in your work.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the right way, but it's the way that I finally settled on doing it. Was I started doing pitches, and I would focus on one aspect of it. So I might focus on like the action adventure aspect of it, and I might make a tweet for that, because I think like most pitches give you like 4 a day, something like that. And so I would just come up with 4 different pitches, and each one kind of focus on a separate one.
Right. So that's also a very pragmatic approach to it, right? Because you don't know what is going to garner the attention from any given agent. If I'm looking for historical fiction and I see Kirk's work, I might be interested. If I'm looking for action adventure and I see Kirk's work, I might be interested. Guess what? It's all still the same project, but it's how you appeal, it's how you market the work ahead of time to the agents as they're looking for these projects. Okay. So I think the last, yes.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say one more thing too. I also would alter it visually as well. So as well as the actual pitch, I grabbed like images from like most people do, grabbed from different parts of the internet and stuff. And so my visuals were also very different for each pitch.
And why did you feel like that was important?
For the same reason that I thought that focusing on one aspect was like if I'm focusing on action adventure, then I'm going to have very action oriented images. And if I'm focusing on the I don't know, tragedy aspect, I might, pull in some images of Anna Karenina, for
Yeah.
instance. Yeah.
Yeah, which tracks very well with your narrative. That
It
makes a lot
does.
of sense. It does. And that's sort of what we're talking about, right? It's the vibes of the project. So especially when we're talking about imaging and playlists, it's not necessarily, it's a novel about heartbreak, so every song is sad. It's what's that secondary layer underneath the heartbreak, or what are some pop culture comparatives, film, music, television that align with the project. Yeah, absolutely. And clearly it worked. Like I got your book and I was like, I love this. I love this so very much. So all right,
Thank you.
of course. So there's one last pitch event this year. It's called Quest Pit and it's taking place on the 4th, right? Yeah. So you have 5 days or so until that event takes place, and you can absolutely go to the Quest Pit website. Hallie, I'm blanking on her last name, and she's one of the facilitators of the event. And look at what they're looking for. There's so many recommendations for each of these pitching events that you can tailor your pitch to every single one. And then you also will get a sense of like what kind of hashtags you're using, what kind of industry professionals might be participating. Sometimes it's only small press, right? Sometimes it's only agents, and you just to make sure you know what you're doing. Oh, and thank you, Karkeep. Just dropped that into the chat for everyone to take a look at the QuestPit website. I appreciate that. Okay, so now I'd like to shift to in-person pitching because this is such a different it's such a different experience. Has anyone pitched in person to an agent? No. Are we worried? Nervous? A little bit? Yeah. You've pitched?
I've pitched, yeah.
Yeah. Nola, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like?
I went to from France. It's very late here. So I went to a literary festival in London, and it's an agent who I like. I like the books, and I follow her on Twitter. And I just went up and I said, "Hello, can I pitch you my book?" And she said, "Yes, you can." So I did. And so that was good. But I hadn't at that I hadn't finished it. And she's now on maternity leave, so there you go. But anyway, so my timing was off. But it was good. It was in a bar. It was in between. It was after lunch, and it was the right timing. I mean, I wouldn't normally just go up to people, but it was good.
Sure.
And you had to get your words out. It was like, that complete I can't think of the word in English. Lift. How do you say? Americans say lift. What do you say? Elevator pitch. It was an elevator pitch. So yeah. So it was it was good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. So, can I pick on this a little bit?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Okay. So I always recommend not pitching until your project is complete. And as you've just experienced, that agent seemed to express some interest and now they're on maternity leave. So, pitching when your project is complete and you feel like you've gotten it to the best place it possibly can be is always a great idea. For several reasons. One, if the agent is interested, you can send it straight away. And two, by that point, when you're ready to pitch, you can talk about it because for me as an author, I don't know what's happening in my book until I've written it. And then I can't even remember it until I've written it again. It takes me 7, 8 drafts before I can really talk about it in a way that doesn't make me look like a maniac, right? Like, then this happens, there's this thing. And, so we want clarity and we want specificity. So before pitching, it's always, always a good idea to have that narrative as polished as it can be. And then you can memorize a pitch with clear, impactful language that's specific and really tight. I hear a lot of pitches where it sounds like the back cover of a book. Does this happen? Find out. And I'm like, well, does it happen? Like, please give me the full arc. And I think that that's pretty standard for most agents, right? We need to know what happens. I don't want to buy your book yet because you haven't told me why I should buy it. So give us an attention grabbing first line. We love that, of course, but then spell out the entire arc. Most pitching events at conferences and the like, it's a structured time. So you book 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes with the agent. Don't sit down and say, what do you want to talk about? Like, or don't, you know what I mean? Like, let's get right down to business. And this is me, every agent is different. I much prefer you to use your time to the best of its ability. And that means if you've got 15 minutes, I want you to spend 7 talking about your book, and then I can ask the follow-on questions. Don't use filler words like she finds herself, he gets lost. Like, tell me specifically the plot points. I want to know from one to the end exactly what happens. And then in doing that, also temper it against a bunch of overloading details. I don't need every plot line. I don't need the B plot. I don't need any of the secondary characters. I just need to know what happens and what the main points of the narrative are. Then you have to be prepared for those follow-on questions. And that's why I like this to be conversational, right? Because I am going to ask you, who is this for? Where does this sit on the bookshelf? Who are your readers? What is your platform like? These are all questions that you need really strong answers for. The last one is a stickler for every author I talk to. Every single one says, oh, I hate social media. Hello, hi, welcome. Join the club. We're happy to have you here. But if you want to be an author in this era, this is where our industry is. And we can all complain about it as much as we want. But until we accept it, and we're not going to get anywhere with it, right? So that question aside, I do need to know exactly who it's for, how you see it sitting on a shelf. And then I want to talk to you about the themes. I want to talk to you about why did you choose this comparative title? If you give me a comp from the 19th century or the 20th century, I'm going to think, maybe they're not reading in their genre. Maybe they don't know who this is for. Maybe they're not clear on this. Oh, we have a friend. Look at this creature. I'm sorry, I lost all train of thought. Sorry, I did not mean to shout you out, but like, look at this, look at his name. Oh, okay.
Sorry, her name's Libby, and she's
Libby.
just
No, she's
yeah.
welcome. She might have a book to pitch me. It's fine. Like, I'm all ears.
It's gonna be like why mommy should feed me more.
Yes. I mean, that's a universal cat statement, right? Like, yeah. Okay, I'm going to pause there because, like I said, I love this to be a conversation. I don't want to be just a talking head. Who has questions about in-person pitches? No one. David, do you have any questions about in-person pitches?
I don't necessarily, but I was curious to know because I know at least clients that I work with don't know what to do about building a social media presence. How do you get started with that? What type of content should you be looking to do? I mean, you know, our authors are so focused on, I just got to write a great story and don't often think about building their market, so to speak, as they're writing the book. I'm wondering if you might comment on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my agent tells me that writing is 30% of my job and the rest is marketing and publicity. And I hated it when she said it. And I was like, no, I'm going to be the one who changes this narrative. And I am not. I am all over social media as often as I can be because that's where our readers are. So how do we begin? Well, we begin by figuring out where we want to hang out. If you love X, be there. If you want threads, be there. It doesn't matter where you are. Be comfortable, be familiar with it, and enjoy your time, right? Because social media is all about being authentic and showing up in your true form. So wherever that takes you is absolutely fine, but then be consistent with it. And what I mean by that is you're not there to sell yourself. You have nothing to sell. You never will have anything to sell. You are there to attract readers. And how do you do that? By being genuine. How do you be genuine? By being vulnerable. What does that mean? Is going to be different for every person. Some people like to talk about their entire lives online because readers want to know who they are and what they're doing when they're not writing. Some people prefer to keep a distance. It's okay to have an answer that's on that spectrum somewhere, but the point is you show up and you attract, you don't promote. You be a good steward to our writing community. That means if you see a call out for someone asking for a beta reader, and you have time, you do it. It's showing up as a critique partner. It's sharing people's stories, that narratives that have been published in short fiction spaces. It's doing all the things that you want someone else to do for you. And I think when I understood that, like that it's not, oh, I'm a writer, and so you should follow me. When I understood that it's no, I'm here to support other authors, it clicked, it changed for me because it's not a networking event at that point. It's a cocktail party, which means I want to be friends with all of you and I want to leave here with your contact info and be friends with you forever. And when I had that shift, when it changed for me, then my platforms, I think everyone saw it, right? Like, if you're coming to my Instagram feed, you're going to see some funny memes. I'm probably going to talk about some personal stuff at some point, but I'm going to primarily be there showcasing other authors that I admire, people whose work resonates with me, the conferences, all of the spaces that I'm involved in without really talking about myself, because that's my boundary, right? That's my personal line. Very, very infrequently do I post personal things on Instagram. And when I do, there's a reason for it, right? Like I'm leading up to something. I've got a method. If I'm on X, it's the same thing. I'm retweeting constantly. Come to my page and you'll see, like, I'm probably complaining about my cat. I don't have enough coffee, or here's all of these amazing authors that we should be following. And that's truly what it is. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a tough pill for all of us to swallow. I hear authors say it all the time. And then I ask them, is this a hobby or is this a career? Because no one's going to take it seriously until you're ready to take it seriously. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so coming back to your pitch, once you've written the book several times, you know your comparative titles, you know where it sits. I would generally shy away from accosting a literary agent in a bar unless they've had a few and they are fine with it, right? Like, and it sounded like for you, Nola, like that was the time and place and it worked really well. But
Yeah,
mhm,
I mean, can I just say that I was talking to the guy that ran it, and I
mhm.
actually said it's a great shame she's not here because I would have pitched to her if she was. And he said, "Oh, she is."
Oh,
And he
see,
said
yeah,
that. So it was
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
organic. It wasn't like me cornering the poor woman with and saying, "Listen to me." So it sort
yes.
of worked. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of when it is organic and it feels right. But if you see an agent in an elevator, don't say, "Oh, I have this book to pitch you." Like, please don't. We're humans too. We've just worked a ton. Conferences are frenetic and most people are introverted who are creative. So we're probably like looking for that downtime. We want a few minutes to ourselves. But then if you do book time, make sure you're using it wisely, right? If that means that you want time with an agent to look specifically at a query letter or to review your synopsis, most agents will be fine with that. I love when it's not just a hard pitch, it's, hey, can you help me look at this? You're an industry professional. How can I change my query letter? How can I update my synopsis? And it's a little generative workshop for 15 minutes. I'm happy to do that at any point in time. Um, I'm less happy when it's day 3 of a conference and I haven't had any caffeine and someone says in the hallway, "Do you want to hear about this book I wrote?" No, no, my dude, I'm sorry, I don't. Like, and I don't want to be that person, but we just need to respect those boundaries. It's so very important. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, other questions? Anything? You guys are very quiet. These kinds of audiences make me nervous. Like I'm like wringing my hands. Yes,
I
Mary
have a
Beth.
question, Jessica.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of talk about Substack. How do you look at Substack? Do you see that as important at all, or
Are you writing nonfiction?
no?
Then it's not important.
Okay.
Because how do you differentiate what you're doing on Substack from any other fiction author, right? And why are you trying to differentiate? Like, let me take that back. We're all out here writing story. And if our goal is publication, then we should be doing the things that make the most sense to get in front of readers, right? It's readers who buy books, not other authors. I mean, authors buy the books too, but by and large, I think you all understand what I'm saying. A Substack to me feels like you're spinning your wheels. You don't have anything to sell. Chances are your content as a fiction author will probably feel familiar to other content that fiction authors are producing on Substack. If you're working on a nonfiction project, I think it's a fantastic way to gain an audience. And then you can substantiate your audience and your readership when you're working on your proposal. Oh, I've got a Substack of 50,000 with readership growing every month. That kind of thing makes sense. But as fiction authors, I don't think it's a good use of your time. If you have the time to go produce a Substack column, I would say channel that into writing book reviews on Goodreads or wherever you like to post your reviews. Because again, it comes back to attraction, not promotion. And ultimately we want our author friends to do for us as we're doing for them. So if you've got 15 minutes to throw a blog together for Substack, why not go review some books you've read? Because that's important. That's how we get second editions, third editions. That's how editors and acquisitions teams determine whether or not to offer a second book on a contract, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, did you have something specific on the Substack you want to talk about? Or were you just thinking like craft?
No, just craft. No, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that's kind of out there to try and develop, a following, or, I write personal essay, but it's not really what I'm focused on right now. So I'm really trying to hone in on what I want to focus on. And I don't want to get distracted by extraneous things.
Right, right. And that's such a good point too, is that, the distraction is very real. We can feel very much like we're being pulled in so many directions and we need to show up on all these places. I completely disagree. If you love being in this one place, be in this one place. And if you are following the attraction, not promotion, your readership is going to find you. Like we are our brands, no matter where we are, what kind of content we're producing. So especially if it's kind of a generic craft sort of Substack, like what gap is it filling? How is that doing anything in the marketplace that is not already there? And the chances are it's not. And that's not as a dig to you. That's any of us could start a Substack and we'd all be, spinning the same wheel. So why not find something that differentiates your fiction, how you want to show up online, and use that as the vehicle? So, take some of the themes that you're talking about in your work, look for other audiences that intersect with those themes, and start working from that space, right?
You mean in Substack?
No, I mean just wherever you
No,
want
in
to hang
other
out.
venues. Okay.
Yeah, wherever you want to hang out. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then that ultimately does help build the platform, right? I'm reticent to call them followers because I don't like that connotation. I don't like that imagery. I don't want to feel like I'm a duck and I've got a bunch of ducks behind. I want to feel like we're all we're all in a room together. We're having a conversation. And so it's truly how I've tried to show up online. And I feel like if you look at the folks who are doing the things that you want to be doing, that's generally what they do too, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And branding is important, right? When I hear a pitch and I love the pitch and the author can talk about their narrative in a really strong way, I feel like they've got a lot of presence. My next question is, what is your platform like? And I hate to ask it, but I have to know, because if you're, under 1,000 and you say, I hate social media, I'm going to have such a hard time selling your book. Such a hard time, because that's what my editors are asking me. What is their platform like? Right? Especially with this emergence of book talk and bookstagram and how we're sort of teetering between being influencers as authors. Like all of that is impacting the way us mid-list people are perceived by the industry. Right? So we have to be online. We have to be pushing toward it as much as we can.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got about 15, 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure that everyone has their questions answered and you feel like you've gotten something from this. So now is your time. Any other questions from anyone? I'm going to drink water.
I have a question, and it's kind of going back to online pitching. I write romantic fantasy, and all of the titles are notoriously very long for romantic fantasy. And I know that it is important to include comp titles whenever you're able to, but in your opinion, would it be more important to include one or two comp titles in a pitch in a tweet for an event, or just to focus on the pitch itself?
Yeah, I feel like for your genre, it makes a lot more sense just to focus on the pitch, because I'm like running through all the like 7-word titles, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And you could just use the initials if you're like, this is the perfect comp, but then you're also using up some of your character count. So maybe not. That might also be a good place for you to utilize a mood board where you could grab the covers of the books that you like, and then we're kind of like putting it all together in that way.
Well, that makes
I was
sense.
going to say, put it in whatever image you're accompanying. Yeah.
That's a good thought. I didn't think of that. Thank you.
Now, I will tell you, back in the day, and I'm showing my age here, we were not allowed to use images in Twitter pitch events. and we only had 140 characters, and we had to walk uphill both ways in the snow to get to school. No, that part's not true. But we couldn't do that. And so it was really difficult, and it was such a challenge to try to encompass your narrative in such a short space. But I would say, as you're crafting these pitches, ask yourself, like, what is the juiciest bit of my plot? What is the part that anyone reading my story would get to and say, oh my God, I have to tell someone about it? And use that as the springboard for sort of how you shape that pitch.
Yeah.
And that goes for in-person or online pitches for sure. Yeah. Okay, so another thing you might want to do when you're crafting online pitches is, of course, run it through Grammarly or use Hemingway, just to make sure it's really, really clear. And then look back at the last pitch event for whatever you're working on. So if it's Pit Mad or Pit Dark, or any of them, and see what got the most likes. You can still go back. All of that's there. The internet is forever. And that can kind of tell you what folks are looking for. If you subscribe to Publishers Marketplace and you follow the recent sales, that's also a really fun way to come about your pitch. Like if for example, you're writing romantasy, that something that's similar to what your writing just sold, then people are looking for it, right? Like that it's just sold, so there might be more of a commodity. It's more of there's a market for it.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Yep. Okay. Also, please, can we talk about etiquette just really quickly? If an agent hearts your post, it's okay to acknowledge it. You don't need to slide into a DM immediately. But when you do go into the DM or however you are asked to respond to the agent, and if they've asked only for the query letter and the synopsis, do not say, okay, would you like me to send you the full manuscript? And this just happened to me. I asked for the query letter. That's all I asked for. And I had an author repeatedly come into my messages and ask me where they should send their full manuscript to. And I mean, first of all, it makes you look unprofessional. You're not following directions, but also like I took that almost like, oh, are you trying to slide in? And like, did I forget? Did I ask for the full? So, just be really mindful of what the agent is asking for. And, be really focused in your replies. I'm like looking through my notes to make sure we've covered everything.
Jessica, I'd like to jump in on that topic because I know that authors can get, really emotional, especially, the online pitch event or in person, and kind of, they feel like there's a lot on the line. And what I've seen really helps is try to take a step back from that and just recognize like, this is more like a business conversation, if you will. I know that it's hard to put those emotions aside. I know you really want to hear like, oh my gosh, she asked, it's for 10 pages, like, oh, my dreams have come true. But let's kind of like tone it down a little bit, right? And just kind of recognize like it is kind of a business interaction, right?
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah. And I mean, that's not to say I'm going to judge if you're like sending them at 2 a.m. Like that's your schedule. Like it doesn't need to be like banker hours or whatever, but to be mindful and respectful of what the interaction is meant to be and not trying to make it into something else. And then if an agent asks for a query letter or a manuscript and they pass, please do not come back to the DMs and say, but why did you pass? Or any kind of follow-up questions. Because, and I'm sorry to say this because it makes me sound terrible, but a no is a no, right? And so if you keep asking why the no is the no, I feel like that's putting both of us in a really uncomfortable position. First of all, it's not in my lane is not to give you feedback. That's David's lane as a developmental editor. My lane is to help sell the book and to be passionate about the narrative. I try to give feedback as much as I can, but it's really, it's a Sisyphus like task, right? Like I'm constantly rolling this boulder up the hill and I never come out from underneath it. So if it's a no, it's a no, and just move on to your next agent. Yeah, it's so important. And then come back to David and say, hey, can you make my manuscript better? Right? Like I got to know and I don't know why. And then you work with your developmental editor to say, yes.
I have like two questions, but I kind of forgot it because I put it in like the little submission thing.
Okay.
So like
let me see if I can pull it up.
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, is this the right one? I think so. Yeah. This might be the right one. Okay. Well, do you have two? Did you remember the other one?
Um,
This is not the right one.
um, it had to do with like kind of like because I just finished like my like manuscript, but like I'm like I just saw this and I was like, oh, like what's querying like and like so like I don't know like I guess like sort of the timeline of like sort of like the whole like because you said it has to be like polished like perfect like basically and
Mm.
so what and so like the the agent is just trying to sell it but like you're supposed to be like the author is supposed to like I guess go to like a third party to like developmental edit and like everything
Mm.
like that.
Mm. Yeah, I've got your question here. If you're unrepresented, unpublished author with a manuscript, what's the manuscript timeline? So I always recommend that you write your book 7 times. And that's not a line edit. That is like 2 Word documents open at the same time, and you literally rewrite it. And it's an arduous task, but it gets it as clean a copy as it can be. And then you have a feedback partner that is not your friend, is not your family member, is no one to you except a feedback partner who will give you that hard feedback. And if you get feedback that, oh, there are tons of plot holes or you've missed something, then you go to the dev ed, right? Because you need outside source to help you with it. In terms of timeline, there is not any timeline that any of us can say, this is how I do it, because we all are skinning the cat differently. So you get it as close as it can be. I just read this article the other day. 10 years ago, agents would take on projects that needed significant edits, knowing that by the time we got to pub board, to selling the book to a publisher, their in-house editor would come in and do a lot of it. And that is just not the case these days. So that's why, yeah, I mean, we're still going to have edits right from the publisher, but it's not in the same way as it used to be. So getting it to as perfect a shape as it can be ahead of time is essential.
Okay.
Yep. And so Amy, I've got these questions up. I see you had a question about how to present and talk about your book concisely since it bleeds into multiple categories. Yeah. No, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was more of a, is it Janae? That it was her question about the
Oh,
mashup. It's more of a mashup question
sure.
because I think that in my mind, sometimes people read it and I think it's kind of like what Kirk was talking about is that what you like, you focus on. So if I had multiple people read it and then they focused on, oh no, it's a romance. Oh no, it's this, it's this, it's
Mm,
that. And so it's all of it, but none of it. And sometimes I have difficulty talking about it because I catch myself off guard because
mhm,
of all that. So
mhm.
that really was my question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how are you classifying it right now?
Um, right now it's I'm classifying it as a historical fiction that is set in the West, the Wild West, and with romance and drama.
Okay. Well, I would say leave the drama bit out because we expect that, right? Um, Unless it's like drama on the stage and that plays a role in it. Does the romance lead the plot?
The romance is the center of the hero and the heroine, but what goes on around is um, kind of political machinations. So it's literally political, and it's also gang related, and so it's different groups of people intertwined,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where it kind of throws me off on that one.
Mm. Yeah, so when we class something as romance, there are certain
Mm-hmm.
tropes of that genre that we have to hit, and usually it's 2 people who are attempting to get together and something is prohibiting that from happening. A third party, politics, the environment, whatever it is, there's something that's preventing that. So if we don't have those standard pillars of the romance genre, I might not lead with it as
Mm-hmm.
the genre of focus. Calling it a historical fiction novel would be enough because historical fiction is such a huge umbrella of a genre as it is. once you get that classification and you have the interest in the work, then you begin to talk about it and you can kind of articulate, okay, well, here's what happens, here's when it's set. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. We had a question here that what is something in a pitch or query that immediately hooks an agent? I'm a generalist. There's nothing. Like I know it when I see it, and that's terrible and awful to say that I can't be more specific, but that's just we're in a subjective industry, which means that there are no patterns and there are no formulas, and there is no way that we can ever articulate exactly what it is. Okay, so a few more minutes. Mary Beth, I see a question here. Is contemporary fiction too broad of a genre? I mean, it's a genre, but I'd love specificity. Is it upmarket? Is it women's fiction? Right? And I think it probably is upmarket women's fiction. I know a little bit about the project, so I'm like picking on you, of course, but yeah.
So I have a, oh, was I interrupting?
No, it's okay. Mary
No.
Beth, sorry, we all got our wires crossed.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. You know my project, so it is I think it is a pretty broad a broad umbrella, and there is romance in it, but the romance, like you just asked Amy, does not by any means lead the story. So I am struggling with that a little. But I also, David and I had a conversation about this, that I'm not sure how important that is, because if you talk with an agent and they say, maybe they see something different and they want to guide you in a different area to sell it, then they might change what you've said, right?
Such a good point. Yes. And Janae, we'll come back to your question for sure. I'm just going to pontificate for one moment that, yeah, if I hear that, if it's classed as upmarket and I really feel like, no, it fits in a different space, that's a conversation, because we reshape the pitch, we reshape the synopsis, we reshape everything to package it that way. But that's also where having an agent who believes in your work more strongly than you believe in it is key. Like it is absolutely key, because that is the person that helps you get to the next gate.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Janae, you're up.
So I guess like it's one of my questions, but like my book is sort of supposed to be a part of like a trilogy, and like how, like, as someone who is unpublished, unrepresented, like, am I supposed to pitch that to an agent? Like, should I like do that, like saying like, should I pitch it as like sort of a standalone, and like then like this sort of like series trilogy happens afterward, or do I pitch it as like, this is like the first part of like what's supposed to be a 3-part novel?
So in your query letter, in your query letter, you want to say this is standalone with series potential. That's the standard line, because no book exists except the book that you're querying at that moment. And just because that one book sells to a publisher does not mean they will offer you a 2 or 3 book deal. So being very realistic about the fact that it is the only book that exists at the moment is really important. And I am going to say, because I know you're writing in the fantasy space, and if trilogy, I'm hearing like big plots and like lots of things happening, keep your word count as low as you can, especially for a debut author. I know, I'm sorry. I know, I'm like out here crushing all the dreams. Even in fantasy these days, 90 is like as high as we can go. And that's because debut authors are harder to launch. There's more on the market, and longer books are more expensive to print. I know. I'm so sorry to say that. I know.
I genuinely I haven't even looked at my word count. I'm too afraid.
You're like, just block that part of my screen off. No, I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, it's still literally in its independent like Google Drive docs. I'm like too afraid to put it all together. I'm like, I don't know how this is going to break my computer.
I mean, it probably will. It's just, but but that comes back to it, right? If your goal is traditional publishing and you want an agent and you want to go this route, you have to adhere to what the market is doing. Same way as you have to be on social media, same way as you have to know your comp titles and you have to do all these other things, right?
Sorry, if anyone
You're
else
so
has a
good.
question.
Oh.
So about the whole social media thing, so I do actively use social media, but I'm more worried in terms of my the book, it touches upon a very kind of almost blacklisted topic that like right now
Mm,
it's sort of like a commentary on it, like the subtext of it is. So
mm,
I'm more worried, like I don't know how long this sort of topic will be blacklisted for, because I'm like a lot of people who I know have experienced like a lot of like rejection from agents and like publishers because of that blacklisted topic. And I'm kind of wondering how like how do I market it as like, even though it has that subtext, how would I market it as like sort of, this is my book and this is like the story, without like touching that sort of subtext that is that basically cradles the whole book.
mm. I mean, I think that's exactly how you do it. You talk about the narrative and you don't talk about the subtext. Like, look at what R.F. Kuang did with Yellowface, right? We all know what that book was about. We all know. But in no interview does she outright come out and say, like, this is a commentary on the writing industry, on the publishing industry. But anyone who reads it, who is in our space, in our business, is like, oh yeah, I know this author, I know this experience, right? She marketed it as, this is a narrative that I wrote about, whatever language she used, but she doesn't come right out and say it. So you do the same thing. You talk about what drives the work and not about the subtext. Trust that your readers are going to pick up what you're laying down without you needing to hit us over the head with it.
I guess, what if it's extremely blacklisted?
I'm so curious. I am so curious, but I'm not going to ask. So,
I could
if
send
it
it to
is,
you if you want, like privately, but like I just
yeah, yeah. I think even when we're dealing with these topics that are blacklisted, obviously you're writing about it because you're feeling compelled to talk about it in some way. Um, And no matter what the climate is right now related to the topic, it's an important topic because you mentioned that a lot of, your colleagues, associates, friends have experienced something similar related to the topic. So maybe the best way, I'm thinking like a politician here, the best way is to address it straight on and say, hey, I'm writing about this thing because so many people experience it in this way. And that might feel very vulnerable and it might, you might need to rely on like a lot of internal fortitude and be very brave about it. But maybe that's what it is. And if we come all the way back to like attraction, not promotion, I'm certain that if you're talking about something that is this deeply impacting our industry, then other people are thinking about it too. So then you get to lead the cause, you get to be the voice and really bring the change that you want or feel needs to happen.
okay.
Okay. All right, everyone, I have just one more minute. This has been such a treat for me. I've loved all of these questions and this conversation. David, I just want to say thank you again to you and DLA for hosting. I hope we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, is it okay if people reach out to you by Twitter, for example, if with follow-up questions they may have?
Absolutely. Yeah. Come find me Twitter or Instagram or Threads. It's my name with 3 S's and 2 underscores. So I'm everywhere. I'm all the places. Very easy to find. Never mind a DM at all.
Okay.
At all. So
Great.
great.
Thank you very much for this informative session. I hope to all the authors who have joined us that you've gotten something valuable out of this. This recording will be available on YouTube, so you can replay it. Contact information you have by email. Anything else you need to know, whether it's agent side, reach out to Jessica. You can always reach out to me as well. We're happy to help. Wish you all a great night. Thank you all for your great questions and happy writing to you all.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.